Hi students, welcome to Year 11 Biology, and this is Module 3, Biological Diversity. We're looking at video number 3 now, and this one just a small focus on cane toads. Our learning intention for this particular video is to be able to explain the observed changes in a population of organisms on the basis of selection pressures over time, using the example of cane toads in Australia. So we're going to have a look at some of the historical detail and also see if we can identify some of the key selection pressures which may have impacted on changes in the distribution and abundance of these particular organisms. Now I should say that as the subject of an assessment task, this video will be a little bit lighter on in detail, but I'm hoping you'll be able to fill some of the gaps in your work a little bit later on. So here is the cane toad, Bufo marinus. It's a pest. Basically, it's what we call an introduced species. Acting as a biological control for a particular pest problem that we had. And I shall give you a little bit of information about that as we go along. Of course, the interesting thing about this particular organism is that it's not a native to Australia, and so therefore it had to be brought into the country in order to actually establish itself on the Australian landscape, and establish itself it certainly has. So let's look at some of the reasons why. So the cane toad was introduced in around about the 1930s, so I'm hoping you're going to be a little more specific with your date. As I said, as a biological control mechanism, and it was a particular problem that we had with cane crops and an insect that was associated with damaging those crops, and they were causing quite a significant amount of damage, enough for farmers to want to look at some solutions to this particular insect. One was to look at one of its predators, and the cane toad fitted that bill quite well. In terms of its absence from the country, well, it was an absence as a result of dispersal. It just could not reach. Australia's an island, and therefore it's isolated from the majority of the rest of the world, except to animals that can swim and to animals that can fly. And the cane toad isn't particularly good at either of those. Swimming, not so much, but certainly it can't fly. And it's not going to be able to do the huge swim to get it to Australia in the first place. So we had to bring it here. We had to overcome the problem of dispersal in order to bring this particular organism into the country. The numbers started very small. And when we're looking at analysing changes in the distribution and abundance of particular organisms, whether they're getting bigger or smaller, we need to think about a couple of important things. The first things we need to think about are the biotic interactions. So what are the predators? What are the natural predators? And what sort of mechanisms does the cane toad have to protect itself from predators? What are its prey? Initially, one of the reasons we brought the cane toad in was so it would be a predator of a prey species which we regarded as a pest. How successful was that? Was it very successful at eliminating the prey species, and or what other species did it prey on in its time here? What sort of habitat did it occupy? Specifically, what sort of niche? And therefore, what competition did it have for the same food or the same habitat, the same areas, and how well did it compete against those other organisms that were already in the areas it preferred in terms of habitat? Things like the abiotic components relating to things like water availability, temperature and temperature ranges, light availability and chemicals and nutrients and all of those sorts of things, which are part of what we would generally analyse when we're looking at abiotic factors. Of course, not all of those are going to be relevant, but they are all things that you need to consider when you're preparing this short case study on your cane toad. Now remember, the most important thing that we're looking at with populations is distribution and abundance. So distribution is where are they, and abundance is how many. Now I can tell you that when cane toads were first brought to Australia, their numbers were around 100. They were bred in the far north Queensland. You can see in 1940s, a very small population dotted around that northeast coast of Australia. And some 40 years later, a much larger portion of Australia was now home to these particular organisms. The diagram, which is a little bit old, and again, I'm hoping you'll find some more up-to-date data, shows the current distribution with the little line here and the potential distribution of the cane toad in the years ahead. And obviously, we've had a number of years since 2008. So this is, in biological terms, an extremely successful species. It's been able to massively increase its distribution and also its abundance in all of these areas. And there's got to be a couple of very important reasons why those two things have occurred. And that's going to be the subject of your report. And I look very forward to reading them very soon. Thanks for watching.